Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video we will be looking at AQA A-Level Psychology 2019 paper 3 exemplar answers for gender, which you need to know for AQA A-Level Psychology. I hope you enjoy this video and find it helpful. Let's get started. Please note that these answers have been produced with knowledge of the mark scheme but have not been approved by the mark scheme themselves. There are 3 assessment objectives, AOs, in psychology. In this video they are color-coded. AO1 Knowledge, purple. AO2 Application, blue. AO3 Evaluation, red and green. Question 1. Outline and briefly discuss Freud's theory of the Oedipus complex as an explanation for gender development in boys. 8 marks. The psychodynamic explanation of gender development is rooted in Freud's psychoanalytic theory, which emphasizes the influence of the unconscious mind, early childhood experiences, and psychosexual stages in shaping personality and behavior. According to Freud, gender identity emerges primarily during the phallic stage of psychosexual development, around ages 3 to 6, when children become aware of their own genitals and the physical differences between males and females. During this stage, Freud proposed 2 key complexes that underpin the development of gender identity: the Oedipus complex in boys and the Electra complex in girls. The Oedipus complex describes a young boy's unconscious sexual desire for his mother and feelings of jealousy and rivalry toward his father. The boy perceives his father as a threat and fears that he will be punished for these feelings through castration, a fear known as castration anxiety. To resolve this intense conflict, the boy begins to identify with his father, aligning himself with the male role model and internalizing his attitudes, values, and behaviors. This process is called identification, and it marks the beginning of the boy adopting a masculine gender identity. Through internalization, these attitudes and norms become a permanent part of the child's superego, helping to form a stable sense of gender identity and morality. Identification and internalization are central to the psychodynamic explanation. Through identification with the same-sex parent, the child begins to adopt gender-appropriate behaviors, roles, and attitudes. Internalization ensures that these traits become part of the child's enduring personality. Thus, Freud argued that gender development is the result of unconscious emotional conflict and its resolution during the early years of life. A strength of the psychodynamic explanation of gender development is that it was one of the first to consider unconscious processes in development. Freud's model introduced the idea that unresolved internal conflicts, such as repressed desires, could shape a person's identity and behavior later in life. This opened up psychology to consider the inner world of the mind, which has influenced modern models like the cognitive and psychotherapeutic approaches. This is a strength because it highlights Freud's contribution to the broader development of psychological thought, even if his specific theories lack scientific rigor. A limitation of the psychodynamic explanation of gender development is that it is based on a single case study. Freud's entire theory of the Oedipus complex, a key part of gender development in his psychodynamic model, was based on the case study of a 5-year-old boy known as Little Hans, Freud, 1909. This makes the foundation of the theory both anecdotal and extremely limited in scope. The case was also reported secondhand by Hans' father, who was known to be a strong supporter of Freud, introducing clear bias. This is a limitation because it suggests that the theory lacks generalizability and objectivity, making it difficult to apply the findings universally or scientifically. Question 2. Describe and evaluate Kohlberg's explanation for gender development. 16 marks. Kohlberg's theory is based on Piaget's theory of cognitive development, which argues that children's thinking changes as they grow up, as the brain becomes more capable of complicated, abstract, and logical thinking. Kohlberg's theory suggested that a child's understanding of gender, including what counts as appropriate gender roles, behaviors, and attitudes, becomes more sophisticated with age as the child matures. Kohlberg identifies 3 key stages of gender development. Stage 1 is gender identity around 2 to 3 years. At 2 years old, children have an awareness of their own gender and can correctly identify themselves as a boy or girl. At 3 years old, most children can identify other people as male or female, but this is based on superficial assumptions such as appearances, as thinking has little internal logic. Children are not aware that sex is permanent, e.g., when I grow up, I want to be a mummy. They may often choose incorrect labels as they may not realize boys become men or girls become women. Stage 2 is gender stability around 4 years. Children begin to realize and have an understanding that their gender is fixed and stays the same over time, with boys growing into men and girls growing into women. They still get confused by external appearances that suggest someone is of a different sex and are not aware that gender is consistent between different situations, e.g., they may describe a man with long hair as a woman. They believe that a person can change sex if they engage in activities associated with the opposite gender, e.g., female cannot be a builder, and lack the ability to conserve or use logic. Stage 3 is gender constancy around 6 years. Children recognize that gender remains consistent and constant across time and situations, and they can now apply this to other people's gender as well as their own. They are no longer fooled by changes in outward external appearance, e.g., if a man is wearing a dress or a woman is wearing a suit, they may think this is unusual, but they will still know that the person is a man or woman. Children begin to seek out gender-appropriate role models to identify with and imitate, who they feel have qualities similar to their own concept of themselves, as they now have a fully developed and internalized concept of gender and seek evidence to confirm this. They may also show preference to same-sex playmates as well as gender-stereotyped activities. There are several processes involved in transition through stages: maturation, socialization, lessening, egocentrism. A strength of Kohlberg's theory as a cognitive explanation of gender development is that it is supported by research. Slaby and Fry, 1975, conducted a study using 2 to 5-year-olds and asked them to watch split-screen images of males and females performing the same tasks. They found that younger children spent roughly the same amount of time watching both sexes, whereas older children, who had reached gender constancy, spent more time looking at the model who was the same sex as them. This is a strength because it suggests that Kohlberg was correct in his assumption that children who have acquired constancy will actively seek gender-appropriate models. A limitation of Slaby and Fry's study when supporting Kohlberg's stages of gender is that gender consistency appeared to start younger than Kohlberg's theory predicted. In early infancy, boys and girls begin to show preferences for their gender-related toys, which casts potential doubts on Kohlberg's idea of universal stages of development. This is a limitation because it suggests that Kohlberg's ages of gender development were overestimated. A strength of Kohlberg's theory as a cognitive explanation of gender development is that there is research to support for Stage 1, gender labeling. Thompson, 1975, found that 2-year-olds were correct 76% of the time in recognizing their own gender, however children aged 3 were correct 90% of the time. This is a strength because it suggests that an increased ability to recognize their own label through age that follows his pattern of stages. A limitation of Kohlberg's theory as a cognitive explanation of gender development is that there is research that challenges the idea that an interest in gender-appropriate behavior only develops around age 6. Bussey and Bandura, 1999, found that children as young as 4 reported feeling good about playing with gender-appropriate toys and bad about doing the opposite. This is a limitation because it suggests that children start to demonstrate gender-appropriate behavior before they have reached 6 years old, which contradicts Kohlberg's theory. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content like this. Bye.